So my oldest grandson, his name is Mayor, and they live in Hendon, which is like a suburb of London. And the first few years when he started school, he went to this warm little preschool, very close to home, we say Hamish is the Yiddish word, friendly and easy. But when he turned 5, it was time to go to what they call the big boy school. The big boy school is almost an hour away from where they live. It's a lot of kids there, but that was the yeshiva that his parents felt was right for him. And to get the kids back and forth to the school had taken one of those double-decker red school buses, those iconic London buses, and they had privatized it. So the kids from Hendon were going to school on this double-decker red school bus. But the first day of school, my daughter drove little Mayor to school. He was only 5 years old, and she felt, she's going to orient him. It's a very big change. And she told him that after school, you'll go on the bus, and I'll be waiting for you at the bus stop. But after she dropped him off, she thought, he's so small, he's only 5, and it's such a big system, and there's so much going on, and it really, really would be better for him that he go home with his mom in the car, and they have time to talk about it and process the day. So she decided she's going to drive him home. And because she lived so far, and it didn't pay for her to drive all the way back home and then all the way back, she spent the entire day in Stamford Hill, just waiting until Mayor finished school, so she could take him home and they could have this, just processing time. So school ended 4 o'clock. She goes to get him, and in London, the kids are so adorable. Head to toe uniforms. He comes out with his friends, and they've got these cardigans and even the shoes, the school shoes. Mayor comes out, and my daughter runs towards him, and she says, "Hi, Mayor. I came to take you home." And Mayor starts to cry. "I want to go on the bus." So she said, "Okay, tomorrow I'll go on the bus, but I waited all day for this. I'm taking you home. We're going to talk in the car." Mayor cried so hard, his shirt was wet. And the whole way home, every time my daughter tried to ask him anything about school or where he sat or anything at all, Mayor had his hands over his ears and he screamed, "Bus, bus, I want to go on the bus." When my daughter told me this, I said, I really get it. Here's what happened. Mayor thought he's going on the bus. That was the plan. That's what they told him. He's going on the big double-decker red bus. He wanted to. Show me a 5-year-old who's never been on that, doesn't want to go on an exciting bus. And he saw the other children going on the bus. So even though the plan that his mom had for him was really better, if he's so busy the whole time screaming, "Bus, bus," he can't benefit from the plan that really would be better that his parent had for him. And I said, story of my life. I thought it would go a certain way. We're always told, if you do this, you'll get that. I wanted it. And I see other people have it. But my God said to me, for you, something different. And if I'm so busy, hands over my ears, screaming about what I didn't get, I can't benefit or grow from what is set aside specifically for me. My husband and I married 37 years, 8 children. 4 of them, we didn't know this till most of our kids were born. 4 of them were born with a very unusual disorder. They were born missing the enzyme that turns food into energy. And basically they look normal, they begin to develop normally, but very, very slowly. But after a while, they run out of energy. And it's a fatal disorder. And it turned out that those 4, who we always call the babies because they didn't live long, they died from this disorder. This took place over a period of 10 years. And a lot of that time was spent in research because the doctors didn't know at first what it was, and they didn't know if our other children, we had 4 healthy children, they didn't know if they could get it later, they didn't know if our children could have healthy children, they didn't know if we could have more healthy children. It was 10 years of very sick children and a lot of research. And then after we lost the 4 babies, it was really important to me and to my husband that we not be that family. I don't know an English word for it, but in Yiddish they say nebuch. Like that people look and say, "Oh, you see them, they have such a sick child," or "You see them, they lost half their children." We didn't want that to be what we were about. And we worked at it. We really consciously made an effort that our children grow up in a home that was a busy home, a happy home, not only about death and illness. And anyone who knows my kids knows that they grew up in a home that was a warm and happy home, with a lot of pain, but home. And our kids grew up. Our two daughters got married, and then our son Yossi, our oldest, we have 1 son, 3 daughters. Our son Yossi started dating. He was 23 years old. Yossi was a very unusual kind of a kid. He was kind of a nerdy kind of a kid. He loved science and animals and jokes and reading and wordplay, and his mom. And Yossi was dating, and the rabbi spoke before about Simchas Torah. This was 13 years ago. The plan was that right after Simchas Torah, that night actually, Yossi was flying to New York to continue with this dating. And so he was that Simchas Torah. He was very nervous. He was very excited. He was a yeshiva kid. So it was like, it was very exciting for him. And that my husband is a mohel. So he does circumcisions, and very often he has them a little bit far. So if it comes out on Shabbos or on the holidays, there's a lot of walking involved. So that particular year on Simchas Torah, he had a bris on the morning of the holiday that was a little bit far. So he drove there before the holiday. He wasn't home the first night of the holiday, and he was going to walk back the next morning. So I was home. My girls were married. So I was home, just was me, my Yossi, and my youngest, my Brachalea. She was 15. So we went to shul. Simchas Torah shul is very hopping. It's a really fun time. And I was watching Yossi dance, and he generally was a shy child. But that year, because of the dating and, it was like his secret, every time everybody took one step, Yossi was taking two. Like he was really, really lit. And it was such a beautiful, just a beautiful sight to see, like this joy from the inside. And there's kiddush in the back, and it's a fun time. At about midnight, it's actually a very holy time too, but Simchas Torah is it's rocking, but it's an incredibly holy, the joy of Simchas Torah is very, very powerful. Even now, maybe especially now. At about midnight, I'd had enough, and I came to get Yossi, him and my teenager, and I said, time to go home. And Yossi comes out, and his face is kind of flushed, and his eyes are very bright. Now, my husband doesn't drink, and Yossi never drank, so I didn't really know what I'm looking at. But he looks at me, and he'd love to say things in funny ways. So he says to me, I don't want to go home. I'm having happy juice. So I said, well, how are you going to get home? We live about 15 minutes from the shul, but it was late. So his friend comes up behind him, and his friend looks like he had more happy juice than him. And he slaps his arm around him, and he tells me, don't worry, Mrs. Kreiman, I'll bring him home. I don't know why I thought it was a good idea to leave, say, one shicker, one drunkard in charge of the other, but I did. I left them there. I went home. He's going to bring him home. But by 1 a.m, Yossi hadn't come home, and I got nervous. So I told my teenager, I said, we have to go back and get him. So we come back to the shul, and by now everything is done. And if you've ever seen the remains of Simchas Torah, like the shul is a mess. And in the back, there's just a few forms. They all look the same from the back, just black hats and dark jackets. And I'm going from one to the other, and they're like slumped over, and I'm looking for Yossi. And I find him, and it wasn't a pretty sight. He was 23, but he never really had much experience with liquor and couldn't handle it well. And his cheek was like stuck to the plastic tablecloth. And I'm tapping him, Yossi. And eventually he gets up and he comes outside, and he's still drunk, but the air in Los Angeles, one thing we could say about LA, we got good weather. So the air is very crisp in the middle of the night. And by then it was like really very late, like early morning. And Yossi gets a second wind, and he starts running up and down the sidewalk. If you know LA, it's La Brea, it's a big street. So he starts running up and down the sidewalk in front of the shul, flapping his hands like an airplane, and he's shouting, flight number, whatever, from Los Angeles to New York, and shouting the name of the girl he's dating. We're Hasidic, we don't do that. And then he's really excited now, and he's somersaulting on the filthy sidewalk. I have to get home. My husband's not with me. It's just me and my teenager and him. I got to get him home. And, we bought him he's dating, a new hat, new suit, new shoes. He's a mess, and he's somersaulting. And I'm getting frustrated. So I said, Yossi, you're impossible. So he gets up, he looks at me, and he says, I'm not impossible. I'm possible. I'm possible. And the rest of the way home, he's dancing backwards in front of me. I'm impossible. I'm possible. Eventually, I get him home. I get him to sleep. The next day, he has to go to the, to shul, but he went in his weekday suit, the old hat, Crocs. After the holiday, Yossi flew to New York and continued the dating. And short time after that, he got engaged. We celebrated his engagement. We started to prepare for his wedding. It was a Friday afternoon. It was a few weeks before his wedding. And Yossi, the summer before, he was a learned kind of a kid. And he was very into research also. He loved learning. And he was asked to go to Costa Rica as a learning director. And his job was to teach the kids. Summer camp was a Chabad summer camp, and he was teaching. But he got to go on the trips. And one of the trips was scuba diving. And Yossi fell in love, not with the sport, but with just the nature of it. And he came home, and after he got engaged, he was very excited. He wanted to get his certification. Then that Friday, Yossi was going for his certification. Something went wrong with the equipment. The police called my husband. My husband came to get me, and we went to the hospital. And I knew already, just from conversation that I heard from my husband, I knew it was very, very, very serious. And normally we pray And I was holding a book of Psalms, but I couldn't pray because I kept saying the same thing again and again and again. I kept saying, this is not the babies, this is Yossi. I was telling God, I was reminding him. You know how when something really, really big happens to you? I was reminding God, you took half my kids. We went through 10 years of such difficulty. We were terrified all the time. There was so much medical stuff that we dealt with. That was the babies. Then I have the 4 healthy ones. Those are healthy. These kids are okay. Those you don't touch. This is not the babies. This is Yossi. This is not the babies. They're dead. This is Yossi. He's getting married. And I kept saying it to myself, just promising myself and promising, reminding God. But we got to the hospital and they asked us to go in a small room, which is never a good sign. Doctors came in. They said, we did everything we could. We're so sorry. And that was that. And we had to get home. Shabbos was coming. There was nothing we could do there. We had to get home. So we drove home, and before we had gotten the call about Yossi, the table had already been set. My daughter had already set the table. I come home. It was within the hour that Yossi had died, and Shabbos is coming in a few minutes, and there's this set table. Now, we light candles for every child. My babies had been alive for a while, so I lit candles for my babies. So I come home, and there's this gorgeous candelabra, because we had for the 8 children, each one gets a light, plus we have 2 big ones on the sides. We've got 10 candles. It looks like this beautiful family. And next to it also, when Yossi was a little boy, I had learned that if you light oils for Shabbos, oils bring warmth and light. So in merit of that, you'll have a son who's a Torah scholar, which I did. I come home and there is the beautiful 10 candles, have a very big candelabra and these 2 oils. And I thought, this is not a family. Most of my children are dead. I cannot light these candles. I'm lighting oils for a son. I don't have a son. And it was so clear to me, I cannot light these candles. But we don't do a mitzvah. We don't do what God asks from us because it's inspiring to us, or because we feel like we understand it or want in on something spiritual there. We do it, really, if you take the word mitzvah, which we translate as commandment, but really the word mitzvah comes from the word safsa v'chibor, which means bonding. In the simplest terms, we're finite human beings. God is infinite. How do we connect? So I grew up with this. I know we don't say it to our children anymore, but it's really very simple. Because I said so. God says, do this. Just because I said so, not because you are inspired by it or feel like it or like it. Many of the mitzvahs are very beautiful, but that's not the point or the reason. Because I said so, and in doing it, you become close to me. I lit those candles. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I remember my hands shaking as I'm lighting. I'm thinking, this is not a family, but I lit the candles. We had Shabbos. And after Shabbos, that Sunday, we buried Yossi in the same cemetery that already had our 4 kids. We buried Yossi exactly 6 weeks from the day he was supposed to get married. And after that, after a burial, there's Shiva. There's a whole chapter in the book on Shiva because people try very hard. It's really hard to get it right. And, people come and they say things. I was, to put it very mildly, difficult during Shiva, shell-shocked, angry, that's mild. So it was tough. But really what was going on during Shiva for me, I was very clear. I knew I'm not going to get up from this. I knew that they can have Shiva and then people go home and they go back to their own stuff. It's a terrible story that happened, but life continues, but not for me. We're sitting on these low chairs and I knew, not only because Yossi and I had been very close, and we really were. We have very similar personalities. Yossi liked to teach, he liked to speak, he liked to play with words. We got each other. We were very, very close, but it was more than that. It was that I felt like there's only so much that a person can take. And I had so many difficulties for so long. There'd been childhood stuff also, and then there'd been the babies, and there was other things. And I felt like there's only so much heartache. A person cannot take more than this and keep coming back. And I can't. I just can't see getting up and doing anything anymore. It was just very, very dark. And the last day of Shiva, and every time people spoke to me, I kept thinking, okay, but soon you're going to go away, and there isn't going to be a later. I was really, really sure of it. I couldn't see it. The last day of Shiva was Friday. It was already Friday afternoon. So Shiva was pretty much over, but there was just a few stragglers left. And I was sitting we have like a garden with a patio. I was sitting there with a few women that were left, still in that low chair. And I was thinking that just a bunch of very dark thoughts. It wasn't good, to the point that I actually scared myself. We can do that, And I realized sometimes you have to stop thinking. I really just didn't know what to do with my own head. So I needed to shut it down. I didn't know how. So I turned to the woman next to me. Her name is Judy Weingart. She's a professional singer. And I said to her, just out of the blue, I said, Judy, sing a song. She looked at me like I'm insane. I mean, we don't sing during Shiva. Jews sing a lot, but not during Shiva. So I said to her, I said, no, I'm serious. I need to stop thinking. Please just sing a song. So she got all flustered. What should I sing? What should I sing? So she turned to the woman next to her, who was a former student of mine. Tell me what to sing. There are how many songs in the world? Millions, billions, trillions, I don't know. Of all the songs in the world, here's the song that Judy sang to me in the last moments of Shiva. It's possible. It's possible. Everything is possible. Just keep your mind upon your goal. Turn to God with all your soul. It's possible. It's possible. And I saw Yossi dancing in the night. I'm possible. I'm possible. And with those words we did. We got up from Shiva. We went on. Truth, sometimes it's not possible. Sometimes it's just too hard. It's not possible. But Yossi didn't say it's possible. Yossi said, I'm possible. And I learned that there's a very big difference. Look at us, all of us. What are we? We are souls and bodies. That's an impossible fusion. That's matter and spirit. I mean, look at that combination. We are an impossible existence. We have within us, every one of us, we have the breath of God. We have infinity within us. We have soul. If we can just learn to make friends with it, to find it, to access it, we can do really impossible, because sometimes it is impossible. But the power of soul, because we have soul in us, we really can tap into, like the rabbi said, resilience, such deep reserves of meaning, of purpose, of strength. I mean, if you think about it, looking at us as individuals, I know that as a community, you've been hard hit, and yet here you are for an evening of strength and unity. And if you look at us as a nation, I mean, that's really also talk about impossible. The sages write that the Jewish nation is like a lamb surrounded by 70 wolves. They want to destroy this lamb. And then the sages say, but great is the shepherd who protects her. Because our existence as a nation, I mean, if you look at the history, starting from the Egyptians and the Assyrians and the Greeks and the Romans and we've gone through so much of just everybody wanted to destroy us. I mean, we've got the Crusades and the Cossacks and the Holocaust and October 7th, and I'm missing a lot, I know. And yet here we are. We didn't just survive, that there's some Jews left. Not at all. Look at us. We survive with strength, with purpose, with good deeds. We are reaching for what's impossible within us. We are touching soul. We do this. And the way that we do it is by awakening within us this awareness that while this world feels very real to us, and there's limitations in this world, and there's difficulties, people struggle with all kinds of things, there's also an awareness that there's something bigger than what's right in front of us. As individuals, as a community, as a nation, we have something greater. We have access to God. We have access to godliness. We have access to forever. The problem with it is that a lot of times it's very abstract. We can talk about soul and we can talk about God, but the life that we experience is very physical. We don't really see it. And the question is asked, why does it have to be so hidden from us? Like, it's just an idea. Why can't we feel it more? So one of the students of the Holy Baal Shem Tov complained. And he said, I don't feel God. And this was very, very, very holy people. I don't feel God close to me. And sometimes I feel it a little bit, and then I lose it. God fades away. So the Baal Shem Tov said, think about the way that a parent teaches a child how to walk. So the parent stands the child up, and then the parent steps back. The child takes a step, and the parent steps back. Child takes another step, and the parent steps back. And the Baal Shem Tov said, why? Why would a parent step away from their child? So the Baal Shem Tov said, because the child and the parent want two different things. The child wants, pick me up, hold me, take care of me, right? That would be great. You do everything, carry me around, pick me up. The parent wants the child to know that he knows how to walk. Parent wants a child to know that he knows how to walk. So the parent steps away. We walk. We walk. We do it. We do amazing, impossible things. Sometimes, though, here I'm talking about myself, sometimes there's some resistance. Sometimes we say, yes, we know, we do amazing things when we're hurting, but no, I don't want it. No. Sometimes we can understand, we can appreciate the growth, but who wants to go through tough stuff? When one of my babies was sick, she was actually at that point the sickest baby in the hospital. And so we were taking shifts to be with her. She was a few months old. So I went to the hospital to be with her. And before I went up to her room, I stopped in the bathroom in the lobby of the hospital. And I went into the bathroom and there was a sign there. They have it in many bathrooms. And it said, baby changing station. I looked at that sign and I said, that's what I need. Baby changing station. And I started to cry. And I'm having this meltdown in the bathroom by the baby changing station. And I'm crying to God. And I'm saying, I want to change my baby. I want to change my baby for a baby that works. I don't want the sickest child in the hospital for the third time. And I'm crying by the baby changing station. I'm telling God, But eventually, enough of that, I had to go upstairs. And my baby at that point, she was intubated, so it was quite a production to hold her, but I came to hold her. And so eventually we moved this, we moved that, I had to scrub up. I'm holding my beautiful little baby in my arms. And my babies, they were very, very sick, but they looked normal. They grew even at a normal rate. So she's like, really, I'm looking at her face and, she's already starting to fill out and her hair is starting to curl. And I put my finger into her hand and she did what babies did, what babies do. She curled her fingers around. And I had this thought. It's going to sound absurd, but sometimes the simplest things are really the deepest. We don't get to change the baby. If your kid acts out in school, you don't get to tell the teacher, you know what, that gets too much trouble. It could be a different, right? But I understood it at a very deep level. I understood it really deep. And just to give you some backgrounds, when the babies were sick, I wasn't very spiritual. I was really very, very anxious. Every time the phone rang, because they were in the hospital, I jumped. I was just very high strung and anxious all the time. I was angry. I was bitter, not proud of this, but I was jealous. I would look at other people who were pregnant, who came home from the hospital with new babies, and I would think they go and they just have this nice thing, and I have this sick child. I wasn't gracious or spiritual about it the entire time. But that day, when I held my baby and I had just finished screaming about how I want to change the baby, I had really kind of a wow moment. I'm looking down at my baby and I realized there's no mistakes. This is a soul in a body on a journey. I don't know why she's in this world. It says that some souls come into this world to suffer, and it's part of a very big story, bigger than this one life. It's a story of a journey of soul through many different incarnations. It's something we can understand. I don't know why, but this I know. My husband and I wasn't by mistake. We are the ones that were chosen to escort her through this life. And even though I don't know what the actual purpose is, I was aware then that even in that situation, I could already see the potential where I could grow. Because my baby, she needed me to show up, but she didn't know I was there. I had to come and I had to hold her and, just so she can have the touch and sing to her. I did it so that the doctors and the nurses would know that this is a well cared for and much loved baby. But I also did it because I understood that at this moment, even though she's not going to get to grow up, at this moment, it brings her some comfort. And I had always been the kind of person that was rushing and everything had to have a point and had to be a goal. And here I was in the hospital, holding a child who would never give back anything. And it really was a transcendent moment. It was a very powerful feeling of bigger. And I thought of the moment, like my soul with her soul, kind of like a forever moment, bigger than just this time and just this calculation of what makes sense and how to spend the time. There was something very, soul-oriented, spiritual about it. And I felt that even though I don't understand the whole picture, I got a glimpse of something bigger than just that moment and the bother and the pain of that experience. Because really, we don't get to know the whole story. We just do what we do. That's really how it works. And I travel a lot. And a lot of the time, I have 6 a.m. flights. Not this time, because I came from somewhere close, so this was a real pleasure. We did 11 o'clock. But usually, most of the time, people like to know that the speaker's in the city on time. So it's a 6 a.m. flight. Sometimes I get lucky and it's 7 a.m. It's not nearly as much fun as it sounds. You gotta show up at the airport, you gotta get up at 3:30, 4 a.m. and go. So I'm not usually able to pray before I go to the airport because it's dark. So when I get to the airport, it depends on the time of year, but generally you have to pray parts of the prayer. You have to say when it's getting light already. So I would prefer to be in some corner by myself praying, but sometimes I end up actually in the crowded gate as they're starting the boarding, and I'm still doing my, standing there, the silent prayer. Now, when you're praying at home or when you're praying in shul, we do certain things and we don't think about them a whole lot. That's just what everyone's doing. We do them. But try standing in a crowded gate with people who you're soon going to spend 5.5 hours with, and you're doing this and this and this. So I was doing that, and I was bowing, and I had this weird feeling, and I thought, people probably wonder, like, what is very strange. And it made me think about it. And right away, I'm fighting with myself, to concentrate on the prayers and not to be worrying about, but human is human. And I felt a little bit vulnerable, especially about the bowing part. And then I thought, okay, there's a lesson here. There's always a lesson. What's the lesson here? And I realized, what is bowing? What do we do when we bow? So I have my head and my ideas. I could tell you a whole speech about how God could do things better in this world. Couldn't we all? This is what would be better. I could tell him how it would be better in my own life. I have ideas in my head about how this world should run. What do? We take our head with all our ideas and we lower it. See, we talk about God as a parent, as a father, a healthy father, like a father that's providing, but God is also our king. And when we talk about that relationship as a servant, people get a little bit like, I don't want to be a servant, but not in a negative way. Here's the good thing about a servant. See, a servant, when a servant is serving the king, the servant gets to be part of something so magnificent, a great plan. And the servant doesn't have to understand it. We bow. We say, I don't know. This is soul work. This is stuff that had to happen from the beginning of creation. I don't understand it. Why is there suffering? Why is there this kind of pain? Why to these people? Why to innocent people? Why? I don't know. But I know what I need to do. We bow, we lower, because we have work to do. So what does the work look like? So after my Yossi died, Yossi drowned. And afterwards, I was really haunted. I had a very difficult time. Every time I closed my eyes, I would see this black water, and I would see Yossi trying to figure out how to get up. It wasn't accurate. Yossi was a very skilled swimmer. He was actually a lifeguard. He actually died in beautiful blue water. But my grief reaction was that I just kept seeing this black water, because I wasn't with him when he died. I kept seeing this black water, and I couldn't function. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't close my eyes. All I would see all the time. And I couldn't even see Yossi as he had been before. He was such a lit up, happy, smart kid, funny kid. And I couldn't, well, he was 23. He wasn't a kid, but it's a mom kid. But I wasn't seeing any of that. I was just, every time I tried to think of Yossi, I had this image. So somebody suggested trauma therapy. And I went to EMDR. EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. So I go to this therapy. I'm sitting with the therapist and we're talking a little bit. And then she tells me, I told her the story, and then she tells me, count backwards from 20. And I'm thinking, count backwards from 20, what kind of therapy is this? But there, I count backwards from 20. Then she tells me, follow my fingers. And she's making these figure eights. And I'm thinking, hocus pocus, I'm paying so much. But I'm doing it, counting backwards from 20, and I'm following the figure eights. And then she has this bar, and she tells me, keep your head straight, just move your eyes. And there's a string of lights, and they're moving back and forth, back and forth. And I'm looking at the lights, and I start to see Yossi. And I see him as a little boy with his bike. And I see him, Yossi had this thing, he never learned from one book at a time, the Hebrew books. He had piles and piles. You have to find this and find that and make notations. And I'm seeing him like that all into his books. And I realized afterwards how this works. The counting backwards from 20 and the following the figure eights, it clears your head. You can't really think about other things when you're trying to think about the numbers backwards from 20, or when you're trying to follow the fingers. You get caught up and it takes away, you're not distracted, because we get in our own way. The answer is in the light. Look to the light. You will find what you need. You will find a way to access joy. But first, get rid of the distractions. We get in our own way. We tell ourselves, it should be like this, or this shouldn't happen, or this isn't fair, or how am I ever? We do these things and we get in the way. And if we want to have the answers in the light, without the distractions. So what is the light? So before there was this world, there was only light. Light is truth. Light is God. Light is good. There was only light. But God wanted this world. This is a tough world. We've got challenges and difficulties. There's evil. God wanted this world. He wanted this struggle. But you can't have this struggle together with the light, because when you have the light, it banishes everything that's not light. And there's only light. So what God did, we say it in our prayers, God rolled away the light. He actually rolled it away. And we have this world. It's a tough world. It appears to be, in some places, like, where's God? It's a world with difficulty. It's a world with the presence of many things that actually seem to contradict God. We have this world, a world with the light rolled away. What's our job? Our job is to bring back the light. The very first words that God says in the Torah, Yehi Or, let it be light. Right? That's what we do. But how? Let's try to make it practical. It's not some great, magnificent work that we do, although it is in the end. We bring light minute by minute, every time we make a choice. In a very practical way, I had times when I feel like I used to say the unluckiest woman in the world, but I could still say something nice to my husband so he doesn't have to go about his whole day worrying about me on top of all his own losses. One line I can do. I'm feeling like it isn't fear or so many bad things. I can still say thank you, God, when I'm holding something to eat and say, wow, thank you for this food. I can still wake up in the morning and say thank you for this day. I'm not feeling very spiritual. I can still learn one line of something, say one prayer. I'm not feeling very generous. I can give a little bit. That's how we bring light. We bring light really minute by minute with every choice that we make. And the good news is that a little bit of light really changes. You have a very dark room. Slightest, the little light on your flash, on your phone that I always somehow turn on and never turn off, that little thing, it changes the room. It does. You light a match in a room, right away, it's not a dark room anymore. A little bit of light dispels so much darkness. We do it minute by minute. And sometimes there is a sense, I speak to a lot of people, and people say, oh yeah, very nice concept, light and doing good, but I don't feel like a vessel of light. I feel cracked and I feel broken. I feel damaged. I can't give. I can't do. There's a very nice poem that talks about the crack in the vessel. We need the crack because that's where the light gets in. And it's really true. The more broken we are, when we are broken in this way, a lot of the illusions that we had about this world that we told ourselves, we realize really the only thing that matters is truth, is soul, is purpose. From that place of broken comes a humility and a realness that is so profound. By the way, side note, from that place of broken comes a much deeper capacity to feel joy. Because people look at me sometimes and say, how do you do it? And they don't understand that when we suffer tremendous pain, we also have a capacity to feel deeply. I'm a really fun grandma. That's how it works. This is the work. This is why we're here. This is really the purpose in this world. A few weeks before my son died, he was helping me to hang photos for my two daughters' weddings. So we were hanging pictures on the wall. We had like these big photos from the weddings. It was light pink wall. We hung one, then we hung the other. He did. I was just giving instructions. And then there was like a blank spot on the wall. It was like a light pink wall. And Yossi was like excited. He was engaged at that time. So he ran over to the empty spot and he slapped his hand on the wall and he said, here, my wedding picture goes here. Now, this is the part where I want to tell you that I smiled at him and I said, yes, your wedding picture goes here and I'm so happy and I love you. Except that's not true. Here's actually what happened. Yossi danced over to the empty spot on the wall and he slapped his hand on the wall and he said, here, my wedding picture goes here. And I said, get your filthy hand off the wall. And then when he took his hand off the wall, I said, look, you left the mark. Yossi had left. I guess he had been, maybe his hand had been a little sweaty and the hammer was a little dusty. On the wall is a handprint, all 5 fingers, a handprint. After Yossi died, I was obsessed with that handprint. I kept telling my husband, we're never going to clean it. We're never going to paint over it. I would bring people over and say, look, I had a son. There's his hand. Like, this is the mark of the boy who was excited to be getting married and the mark of the mother who thought that a handprint on the wall is, something to get upset about. But it was so real to me. But then I realized I was really worried it should never fade. It faded. We painted over it because I realized that's not the mark. We go through this world, we leave handprints, or we build magnificent buildings, or we own businesses. It's all good, but it's not the mark we leave. The mark we leave is how we treat each other, what we do with what we own, how we handle whatever we have. This goes with us. This changes us. It changes the world. It's the only thing we keep with us. The good that we do, the kindness that we have, the grace, the strength, the thoughtfulness we show one to the other, the little efforts. And people ask me all the time, I get this, how? How do you do it? How do you do it? Really very simple and very difficult to do, but very, very simple to understand because truth remains truth no matter what. So when Yossi was a little kid, he liked going rollerblading. And because I wanted to keep tabs of him, just keep him in my sight, I had rollerblades too. But he was like a whiz. He would go really fast, and he was great at it. He was very young, but he was just very good at it. And I was terrible at it. So I would be like wobbling behind him. But we would do this. So many, many years later, after Yossi died, and I was near the ocean, I decided I want to go on the path and rollerblade. It was something that, because I had done it, just me and Yossi was the only child of mine that did this. I wanted to do it again, like recreate that closeness. So I went to the beach with my rollerblades and my helmet. I put on the rollerblades, I put on the helmet, but the helmet didn't fit. It had been so many years, and I don't know what had happened to it in the process, but I couldn't get the helmet on properly. So I put the helmet back in the car, and I'm going on my blades, and I didn't get any better in the many years. So I'm really wobbling along the path. I'm terrible at this, but I'm thinking about Yossi. And the path is going, and then I see that the path goes up, like up a hill. Now, any dummy will tell you that if a path goes up a hill, it's also going to have to go down a hill. And if you don't know how to skate well, and you don't know how to stop, and you're not wearing a helmet, you have no business going down a hill. But I wasn't thinking, I just was there, I was doing it. So I go up the hill, and all of a sudden, I am flying down that hill. I am going so fast, and I'm like thinking to myself, you're gonna fall, idiot, you don't have a helmet, you're gonna fall. And as I'm going down, and this happened more quickly than the time it takes to tell it, but as I'm going down, I see a pole, like at the bottom of the hill. And I figure if I can just like go towards that pole, I'll catch the pole, I'll hold on to the pole, maybe I won't fall. I hit that pole so hard, I fell backwards and hit the back of my head, which I always say explains a few things, but the first moments, the Yiddish word would be azets, like knocked off your feet to such an extent. I mean, I was just like knocked, like really, I went flying down, and I'm flat on my back. And it took me a minute like to realize, okay, let's see. We're at, okay, this is the ground, there's the clouds, okay, the sun, everything is still in this, where it was. Now what? So I'm a survivor. I took stock. What used to work, what still works? I used to be able to move my arms. Can I still move my arms? I tried. Still move my arms. Used to be able to move my legs. Can I still move my legs? Still move my legs. So what used to work still works. I'm kind of banged up, but I can get up. I can keep going. So I got up. I took the skates off. I went back to my car. 2 miles I had gone in my socks. I've never skated again. But on the way back, I'm thinking, Yossi died was the same thing as Zets. And I think we can all identify now with a Zets that knocks us off our feet. All of a sudden, we don't know what was, what used to be, what still is. Such a shock that we get thrown completely. And we have to start asking, what used to work? What still works? And I'm walking back in my socks and I'm thinking, I used to believe in God. The day Yossi died, I was a principal of a junior high school at that point. In fact, I met one of my students here, a couple of my students here today. I was a principal of a junior high school, and that morning, every day I would teach from this book called Hayom Yom. It's like a Hasidic diary, and it's always the same, which means that this teaching is forever linked to Yossi. It's the day of his yahrzeit, it's the day of his death. I taught that morning about divine providence, that a blade of grass doesn't move in the wind without it being part of the plan of creation from the time the world was created. How much more so the movement of a person. Nothing happens without God. There are no accidents. I used to believe in God. Do I still believe in God? That nothing happens without God? Still believe in God. I used to believe in soul. That soul is forever. That we are soul before we come into this world. We are soul after we leave this world. And the primary work in this world is souls. It's souls and bodies, but it's soul. Do I still believe in soul? Still believe in soul. So what used to work still works. Still believe in God. Still believe in soul. So I'm kind of banged up, but get up. I can keep going. Because truth remains truth. It doesn't change. But here's the thing. It's not enough just to get through it, to grit your teeth and say, I will endure. I will just push through. It's not enough. We need more than that. We can't have a Judaism of bitterness and of heavy sadness, and we're forced to do this. It's not going to work. It's not going to work because we're fighting the fight of our lives. If you look at some of the videos of the soldiers, there was like dancing, and they're one on top of the other, sitting on the shoulders, and they're singing. What is it, camp? I mean, it's they know, and we know how serious it is, and yet there's all that joy. What is it? But they know, at a very deep level, that if we don't go literally into battle with a sense of joy and purpose and confidence, with a belief that this is worth fighting for, this is good, if they don't go in that way, then we're actually compromising our chances. So the joy is our way of saying we're bringing everything we have to the battle. Our Judaism has to be the same way because it's so difficult. We're fighting so many things that happen to us. And we're fighting within ourselves many times, our own tendencies towards despair or laziness or sadness or anger or whatever it is. We have to have a sense of purpose. We have to have a joy. We've got to go singing and dancing into this battle. It's not easy, but it's an ongoing minute by minute. After Yossi died, I was cooking for Shabbos, and I don't like when my husband comes to the kitchen. He's a great guy, but I don't like him in the kitchen. But he came into the kitchen. I'm making eggplant, and he said to me, "Why are you putting so much salt?" This is why I don't like him in the kitchen. So I said, "I'll rinse it off after. So my mother makes it." And he said, "But why so much salt?" So I said, "Because when you salt the eggplant before you cook it, it takes away the bitterness. Salt is good for taking away the bitterness." And all of a sudden I feel I'm in my kitchen in LA and this white flakes coming down over my head and shoulders. And I turn around and my husband is holding the salt shaker, shaking, and he says, "To take away the bitterness, because we cannot continue that way." Very nice, you might say, but it's too hard. Be happy, sing, dance, sounds very good. Shake the salt over your head, sounds good, but it's too hard. So in the book, I call this, "Even Though." The day that we buried the last of our babies, the fourth baby, right after the funeral, I was on my patio with my 4 kids and my good friend, her name is Fradel, my Israeli friend. And I was saying that I had read that there's an angel. His name is Metatron. And this angel learns with all the babies and all the children who came into this world and left this world without sin. The pure souls that came in, they have a special yeshiva with the angel Metatron and they're learning in heaven. And that was fine. But then I started to get upset. And my kids were there and I started to say, I wonder if the angel Metatron takes attendance. Do you think that every day he says, "Oh, Kreiman, Kreiman, Kreiman"? And my kids are looking at me like the angel in attendance. And then I get a little bit more upset and I say, "And today the angel says, oh, look, a 4th Kreiman. This is how the angel Metatron is taking attendance today. Kreiman, 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 Kreiman." And my good friend says to me, "Shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up." We froze and then we laughed. And my kids didn't know where to put themselves because we didn't grow up in a house where, you don't say shut up. Still now, we don't say shut up. We don't speak like that. But shut up, shut up, shut up, shut up 4 times with an Israeli accent you can say, and I'll tell you why. Because here's what it means. Here's what it means. My friend was telling me, even though today you buried your last baby, and it wasn't just the last baby, because at that point, after all the research, we already knew the numbers with heredity. We didn't know it in the beginning, and doctors didn't know it. But at that point, we knew that we have a 25% chance with every pregnancy of a sick child. And even though it's good odds, because it's 75% chance for a healthy child, 25% chance for a sick child is too high when it devastates a family to the extent that it did every time we had one. So we knew, I was in my early 30s, it wasn't something I spoke about for many years, but we knew that we wouldn't have more children. And I was someone who had 4 kids in 4 years, like there was, in my mind. So it was very, very devastating. It was very private grief. It was an ache, but I remember standing at the grave of the 4th baby and thinking, we're really burying all the kids we can have, and there's no shape for that kind of a loss. And my good friend knew what we were dealing with and how hard we'd fought for this last child who I was sure would be healthy. And she was saying to me, even though you are so devastated, and even though it was the day we buried him, so it wasn't like, I had a whole lot of time yet to adjust. And even though it's really, really understandable if you go to pieces now and you do your thing, even though nobody would blame you, and it's so difficult, you still can't, because you have 4 little children here and you don't want to add more trauma to them. So we do what we have to do. It was so difficult. It was also so wonderful because it kept me focused and we manage, we find it. And I'm going to end with this. People say to me a lot, it's different for you. You grew up religious, or you're so spiritual, or you're very strong, or you're happy. That they know because I'm wearing lipstick. They assume. So for me, it's easy. And they tell me, I didn't grow up religious. I'm not strong. I'm not happy. I'm not spiritual. I don't know how to do that. I can't do this finding God and, joy. I can't do it. What they don't know, because you can never tell a person's in a struggle, is that the only way I've learned how to do it is really minute by minute. After Yossi died, I wrote a journal. I didn't know I was writing a book. I just thought I'm journaling. God was looking down and saying, "Sweetie, you're writing a book." I didn't know. But I was writing down everything that I was going through, like what I was thinking and feeling, every memory I had. But really, I looked at it and it's an inelegant mess. Like I wrote there the actual battle minute by minute for sanity. I wrote crazy stuff, like as we were burying Yossi, my daughter, who barely made it to the funeral because she came from London, so she made it just for the end as we were burying him. And she sees this mob, and she clustered with me and my daughters, and she said, Yossi must be loving all this attention. And we laughed as they buried Yossi. And I wanted to edit that out and say, no, I didn't laugh while we buried my son. But I did. And I left it in because laughter and tears are so close together. And I wrote in there how I was binge eating during the night because I couldn't sleep. And I wrote how when people tried to talk to me during Shiva in a jealous fit, I was counting how many children they had. And I wrote about the time on Yossi's birthday when I had a fight with my husband, and I backed out of the driveway with my foot all the way down on my poor shocked old minivan. And I wrote the messy journey, but I also wrote the step-by-step struggle to come back, to figure out, how am I still a mom to a child who's not here? Because I knew I would always be his mom. How do I relate to other people who haven't lost most of their children? How do I relate to a God who I felt it kind of kicked me to the side? And I wrote it down, and what I realized was there's no grand spiritual being or a happy person or a strong person. There's a moment by moment struggle. When I wanted to say something sharp or something self-pitying, and I bit it back. When I looked at my husband's face and realized that even though I'm feeling sad because it's a significant day of something, I can still reassure him. When I can find something to be grateful for, there's so much. I can choose moment by moment. And I'm really ending with this. I had a meeting in a building that had an underground parking lot. So I parked my car there. When I came out of the meeting, it was already night. And the parking lot, the elevator area was lit, but the parking lot was pitch black. And I came out of the elevator, and I'm standing where it's lit, and I know that my car is somewhere in this very dark parking lot, and I'm afraid. But I know I have to go to my car. I don't want to go. Sometimes we don't want to walk into the darkness, but we don't have a choice. So I started to walk, and as soon as I started to walk, lights started going on above my head because we were dealing with motion lights. And I thought, that's really how it works. We feel stuck. It's too dark, it's too hard, I don't know how, I don't want to, I'm scared, and I have no choice. So I take a step, I do one small thing. I show up at a class like this, look at you as a community, showing up together. We take a step, a light goes on. We do something else, we take a step, a light goes on. And before you know it, the whole world light. Thank you.